Hi, everyone, and welcome to the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. YIVO, as you may know, is a special place for the contemplation and celebration of Jewish history and culture. You can explore yivo.org to register for our upcoming programs, including this week, actually an in-person film screening for anyone who might be in the New York area on Jewish food. So that should be pretty fun. And today we're excited to offer a very special program that's actually about YIVO itself. How to do research at YIVO, a practical introduction, is going to be led by Hallel Yadin, who is an archivist here at YIVO. Before coming to YIVO full-time, Hallel interned in the YIVO Archives and worked as a research assistant at Rutgers University's Special Collections University Archives. She's currently completing an MLIS with an emphasis on archival studies at the University of Missouri, and she holds a BA in history from Rutgers University. She has a reading knowledge of Yiddish and French. So Hallel, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your knowledge about the YIVO Archives with our audience. I'll note that we will take audience questions towards the end. So if you have any questions at all for our archivist here today, you can put those in the Q&A function on Zoom. Let's go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you everyone for joining us. We are going to be powering through a lot of information today and a lot of different links. So like Jane said a few minutes ago, but if you just joined, we do have a PDF with all the links that is floating in the chat, and it's also on the event page that I am going to share the URL to right now. Oop, I'm gonna go back, not quite there. Hold on, we're gonna try that again. Sorry, folks. Give me 1 second. I'm going to be looking at my other monitor, but I am right here. Can everyone see that? Okay, great. So right here, yivo.org/research-intro, all of the links that we discuss are going to be there. My colleagues will also be putting them in the chat, so you can keep them and open them as you are watching, or you can just get everything at the end. So today we are going to talk about different YIVO catalogs, sort of different places that we store different kinds of information about our collections. We are going to talk about general catalog search tips. We're going to talk about how to access material once you figure out what you want to look at. We're going to talk about research questions more broadly, and then we're going to go over just a few of the many supplementary resources that would be helpful if you're doing research in Eastern European Jewish history. So the first catalog that I want to go over is at search.cjh.org, here after referred to as the catalog, because search.cjh.org is kind of hard to say. So this is the General Library and Archive Catalog. It's not just YIVO, it is YIVO and all of our institutional partners at the Center for Jewish History are all in one place, which is great because sometimes you find stuff from other institutions that's also helpful to what you're looking for. So here you're going to find catalog records for archival collections, and then all sorts of other formats, books, periodicals, media, like VHSs, different kinds of recordings, objects, anything you would find in the YIVO collections, the catalog record is going to be here at search.cjh.org. We're also going to talk about archive space. Archive space is a way to search archival finding aids. So a catalog record, we're going to go back and look at the difference on the actual websites, but quickly, a catalog record is the description of the entity being described. So in the case of an archival collection, it's just going to be a general overview of the collection. Archive space is where you're going to find finding aids, which are what is actually in the collection. So let's take a look. What is also fun about archive space that is potentially of greater interest, because I see that we have a real geographic range of attendees here, is archive space is where you're going to access most of our digitized material. So let's take a look at this collection, Record Group 4, Autobiographies of Jewish Youth in Poland. First, let's get situated. There's a lot going on here on the home page, but this first page, this first tab where you see collection overview, this is where you're going to find all of the general notes that we have about the collection overall, different kinds of notes about who is in the collection, the sort of people being described, different subjects, any sort of historical background, that's all going to be here. And then if you want to look at what's actually in it on the folder level, there are a few ways to do that. I tend to just use the sidebar. I'm going to pull this out so I can see things a little better. Just click the little carrots, and then I can scroll through and see all of the folders that are in this collection, right? You can also go over to the second tab, collection organization, that has kind of similar information, but it's laid out a little more easily. I don't have to click into the actual record to see things like year and length and language. This is usually not the most helpful because it often just says box 1, box 2, box 3. But if you know what box you're looking for, because you have, maybe you're looking at a citation in a book and it says it's in box 3, you can go straight there. You can also just get a PDF finding aid if that's your preference. You can download that and keep that wherever you're organizing your research materials. So once you're in ArchivesSpace, that is how you're going to actually be able to access anything we have digitized. What's also nice is that you can search just within the collection once you're on this home page that says collection overview. So let's say we have this collection of autobiographies. I'm researching youth in Warsaw. I'm gonna look at Warsaw. We have 35 diaries from Warsaw. I'm gonna click on the actual object. Sometimes there is more information on the object level or the folder level more accurately. In this particular case, the folder has one object, but ArchivesSpace is organized by folders. So a lot of times there'll be more stuff in the folder than just one thing. But here you can see there's a little bit more information. And then if you click view online, that is where you get the PDF of the item. If you are using Firefox like I am, it's just going to download the PDF. If you are using Chrome or you have your Firefox settings set differently, it'll show up right here. Can you all see the PDFs that popped up? Is it the entire screen or just the Firefox browser?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So that's how it shows up for me. What's that gray screen behind it? In a lot of other browsers, it would come up there. And then either way, you can also use this button to download the entire PDF, put that, store it wherever you're keeping your research materials organized. So that way you don't have to keep going back to ArchivesSpace every time you want to look at something. So let's go back to the catalog and look at the difference between a finding aid and a catalog record. We're going to go back to RG4. So this is the catalog record for the collection. So you can see there's still a ton of information about it, but we don't have the actual every single folder like the finding aid in ArchivesSpace does. But that is okay, because if you scroll all the way down to links, everything that has an ArchivesSpace resource is also linked in the catalog. So I'm going to be honest, if I'm looking something up, I go to the catalog and to ArchivesSpace separately. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. Just remember to scroll down in the catalog record. And if there is an ArchivesSpace resource, it'll be linked and you can know to go there. Not everything has a full finding aid in ArchivesSpace. And by not everything, I mean a small minority of collections have finding aids in ArchivesSpace. It's something that we are working on. We'll get into that in a second. But it's always worth checking because, as you can see, those are very easy to navigate. So we do have also what we call legacy finding aids. So let's take a look at a collection that has a finding aid, but doesn't have an ArchivesSpace resource yet. Where it's happening. just a long process. So this is a collection that comes up a lot. I saw in the chat, a lot of people are interested in genealogy. Landsmannschaften are a great genealogy, Landsmannschaften records are a great genealogy resource. So this is a catalog record for Landsmannschaften collections. You can see there's no finding aid in archive space. What we have is what we call a legacy finding aid. So that should load. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yep, okay. So this is a PDF of a scanned paper finding aid that we just linked into the catalog record. Here's the thing. As far as the catalog is concerned, this is a picture. All of this text, this whole list of Landsmannschaften records that we have, it doesn't know that they're there, right? So if you searched any of these phrases, if you searched any of these names of these organizations in the catalog, record group 123 Landsmannschaften would not come up because it doesn't know that they're there. So I encourage you, if you think a collection might be helpful, to go scroll all the way down, check if there's a finding aid, and actually read the finding aid, because it's a very long process to sort of remediate everything, get it all into archive space, and we're just in the middle of it. So for the time being, definitely check, see if there's a PDF finding aid. For comparison's sake, we have 550 legacy finding aids, and I think around 150 have archive space resources. So definitely we're still working with those scanned finding aids that are not going to show up in search. So be mindful of that and make sure that you check those, because there is a lot of information in there. They do have sort of what's in the actual collection. It's just not discoverable by a computer. All right, so most of our digitized collections are in archive space, and anything that is going to be digitized going forward is going to be in archive space, so it'll all be in one place. But there are, especially again, since so many of you are not local to New York City, I do want to highlight some of our digitized collections or projects that these were completed before we were using archive space. And so these are accessible through standalone websites. So let's go through these. The first one I want to talk about is People of 1,000 Towns. I'll zoom in a little bit. This is a collection of digitized photographs of Jewish life in pre-war Europe. This you do have to, I'm already logged in, you have to make an account to access it, but once you make an account, you should be good to go. It says when you make an account that it'll expire and you have to renew it. I've never found that to be the case, so don't worry about that. But once you have, this is a good one, not necessarily for genealogy research, but just if you're trying to get a sense of an ancestral town, you can search the catalog. Ooh, I do have to log in. That should work. All right, we're gonna go back to that later because you don't need to watch me try a password. But that is a great collection, a really world-class collection of pre-war photographs. So the other collections, the other projects that we're gonna go through, this is exactly what it sounds like. The digital archive on Jewish life in Poland. This is a great resource. It has a lot of documents, it has a lot of pictures, other media, it has things like music. You can see it also has a lot of sort of supplementary material for researchers. So this is kind of meant to be a great jumping off point for researching Jewish life in Poland. We also have what's called the Milstein Project. This is digitized material from 6 communal agencies. It's not the entire collection of any of these, but it is selected material that was digitized to give a sense of the development of these particular organizations. And then the last one I want to highlight that is not available through ArchiveSpace is the Ruth Rubin Legacy website. And this is field recordings from the Ruth Rubin collection. And Ruth Rubin was a very important Yiddish folklorist and musicologist. So these are old records that were digitized from that collection. So again, anything that you hear going forward, that is going to be in ArchiveSpace, but do keep in mind that these are only available for now on their own websites. I want to talk about this because it comes up a lot. I think it's a little confusing what this website is. People do reference it quite a bit. This is not a catalog. This is YIVOarchives.org. You can see in the screenshot. You can also just go here. The website is called Guide to the YIVO Archives, and that is because it is the web version of this book, Guide to the YIVO Archives, which was published in 1998. So this is not a catalog. It has been, I believe, updated later than 1998. The website came along a little later than the book, but this is not our catalog. This is not regularly updated. So this should not be the only place that you are searching for materials. I do want to show you one fun thing. This is like a real insider trick, but for right now, this is the only place to search what was described of the photo archives when this website was built. So if you just click photos only under the little search tab, you'll get to an option to only search YIVO's photo archives, which actually a lot of the photo archives have been described. So it's very helpful. You can search either sort of the dedicated collections or just search keywords. You can search people. It's all going to be, well, not all going to be in there. We do have a dedicated photo archivist who can guide you if you're looking for photographs, but the YIVOarchives.org photos only is a great place to start. Okay, so that is all that we are going to talk about the YIVO sort of portals you can enter. I know it's a lot, but like I said, you can go to the catalog, and everything that we have around that catalog record is going to be linked. So if that's a lot, just start with the catalog and go from there. So with that being said, let's talk about some ways to optimize your catalog searches. I'm going to discuss these with an eye to YIVO, but these are going to be at least somewhat applicable to actually any library catalog. So the first thing I want to say, if there's one thing you walk away from this presentation with, is that a library catalog is not a search engine. This is for a lot of reasons, has a lot to do with the sort of digital infrastructure of a catalog, but this is what's relevant for you to keep in mind while you're searching. A search engine like Google is tracking everything that you search. So that means that you can enter something totally vague and it'll probably bump exactly what you're looking for to the top of your results list, right? Like if I pulled out my phone and I Googled sushi, the first result would probably be the closest sushi restaurant, if not the closest sushi restaurant I've already visited and the time and date that I visited it, right? The same is not true of library catalogs. When you're searching in a catalog, the more precision, the better. A catalog is going to do its best to deliver exactly what you asked for, not what it thinks that you want. So the first thing that I encourage you to do is to explore various advanced search options, right? They will look different at different institutions. The library can customize what comes up when you click this, but you have all sorts of options for different fields, different ranges. You can do, well, we'll get into the Boolean operators actually in a second. So I really encourage you to think from the start of what you're looking for. Well, actually, let's just pick one more thing. I honestly tend to not use advanced search when I'm entering a search term, I usually just enter my search term and then use the filters on the side to filter the same way. So either one, they have a lot of overlap unless you want to enter multiple fields. So either one works fine. So even if you think you're entering a very broad search term because you're really interested in broad research, you probably do have some sort of way to narrow it down, right? You're probably interested in some language, maybe a certain region, if not a more specific country or city, a century, if not more specific years, right? So from the start, you want to think about as many ways as you can refine your search as possible so that you don't get just entirely inundated. So you can see, even if I feel like, oh, I just want to see what's out there, I'm doing general research on Purim, 765 results is a lot to go through. So maybe, you know what, I'm only looking for archival materials. I don't really need Purim music right now. Something like that. Also, a quick note, once you are in a catalog record, there are going to be, for a lot of records, there will be subject headings. So something like this, if I go to click Purim, I'm going to get slightly different results because it's everything. It's not just something that has Purim in the title or in the description. It's going to be everything that a librarian said, this is about Purim, which is a bit of a fine distinction, but you can see I have fewer results and probably better results because, again, that search engine, that search in the library catalog is going to pull everything that says Purim in the description. But a subject heading is everything that the cataloger said, this is specifically about Purim. That's one thing to keep in mind if you are really just drowning in results, which for certain topics you will be. Another thing that might make your search more effective, these are called Boolean operators. They're pretty intuitive, but we'll go through a few examples. So these are sort of logic functions that can tell the catalog more precisely what you're looking for. The most common ones are and, or, and not. So let's do a search. Let's say I'm doing research on Mexico. And I put in Mexico. Great, I have 1,000 results. That's a lot. I think, you know what? I don't want New Mexico, because that's not in Mexico. Great, we've gotten rid of 300 results. And then I think, you know what? Look at all this stuff in Mexico City. So many people have written about Mexico City. I don't need to look at that right now. I want to see what else there is. Okay, not city. And now I have 500 results. Still a lot, but A, fewer results, and B, results that are more in line with what I'm actually interested in. So, and it does, these are exactly what, you would think that they do. If you do and, it will only show results that have both of the things on, or any, you can use these as many times as you want. But if I said Mexico and city, we can see it would only return results that had Mexico and city. So you can see those are those same 305 results that we lost when we said not city. And then or, this is not going to be so useful for Mexico or city, but just so you see, it has to have one, but not both. So city is obviously pulling a lot of results in for us. Another thing that's useful is quotation marks. If you search with quotation marks, it will ensure that only results which perfectly match the phrase within the quotation marks will be returned. So here's an example. Say I'm interested in youth groups. I'm interested in seeing what we have on United Synagogue Youth, the youth group of the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism. I put that in, Okay, great. I have 91 results. That's a lot of material. I start scrolling. I'm clicking on a catalog record. This is not about United Synagogue Youth, right? The words United Synagogue and Youth are in the record, but they're not actually next to each other. So what I want to do is put quotation marks around it. And now I'm only going to get results that have that exact phrase. So you can see we went from 91 to 6 results, but those 6 results are higher quality. They're actually what I'm looking for. The last thing that I want to talk about, and there are other Boolean operators, I've never used any other ones. If you find other ones and have use for them, let me know because I'm curious, but these are really the important ones. So an asterisk is a wildcard. You can use it in place of one letter, or if you use it at the end of a word, there's no character limit to how many characters it can be wildcard. So let's look at an example. This is a little silly, but it really sort of illustrates how sort of literal a catalog is compared to a search engine. So let's say I'm interested in women. Put that in, I get 13,000 results. I'm interested also in things that say woman, right? Presumably, if I'm interested in Jewish women, something about Jewish woman might be interesting. But I'm getting now 3,600 results because those don't actually, just because I said women, even though it makes sense that I would want woman, I didn't tell the catalog that. So if I put an asterisk here, I'm going to get results for any letter that could fill in for the asterisk. So now you can see that's the combined results for woman and women. And then also, actually, I didn't even think of this, but also if you are looking for stuff that spells woman like this, which we don't have, but stuff that would also come up that might be useful in other library catalogs. And then if I put it at the end, it'll fill in as many characters as there are relevant words. And I'll tell you the only time that I use that, just because this might come up. This is a question that comes up pretty often, but people ask pretty regularly. They can't figure out how to spell their ancestral town, right? Either because the sort of transliteration is not intuitive, or because the way that their relatives talked about it wasn't sort of the official way that it was documented. So they can't figure out what the right sounds are to look it up in a more formal record. So there are lists of place names that we are going to go over later in the supplementary materials, but sometimes I'll just put the first few syllables that somebody tells me for the town and then put an asterisk at the end and just see what comes up. So I only say that because I know it's a question a number of people might have because it comes up pretty often. So that is one way to go about looking up sort of more formal spellings of town names. But there are easier ways that we will get into. Okay. Another question that comes up a lot is how to search for materials if they are not in English. All YIVO description is done in Latin script, i.e. English letters. So even if you are searching for something in a different language, say you're searching for a book that's written in Russian, even if you use the Cyrillic alphabet, it's probably not going to come up. You will see it in the YIVO catalog because YIVO used to catalog in both transliteration and what's called native script. That is not what we do anymore. And this is a general library thing. I mean, there might be exceptions, but by and large, American libraries are going to catalog in Latin script. This is good to know, but not always helpful because obviously, if you've spent any time with Yiddish, you know that transliteration can be tricky, or with any other language. So one thing to keep in mind is that YIVO, of course, uses YIVO transliteration, and there is a link in the link list that we've been mentioning on YIVO transliteration and a sort of pronunciation guide. And you can also cross-reference with the YIVO encyclopedia and other YIVO material to see if the place or the person or the organization, whatever it is that you're searching for, and you want to be sure that you're spelling correctly so that it comes up, you can take a look at other YIVO materials. It might be somewhere there, and that way you can see how YIVO spells it and how YIVO would have spelled it in the catalog. And as much as possible, we'll put variant spellings into the catalog so that things come up even if they're not sort of the official spelling, but that is dependent on kind of the project. So definitely, if you feel like we should have something and you're not finding anything, try and spell it a little bit differently and see if something else comes up. And I don't say all of this to scare you off. A single typo is not going to tank your catalog search. A weird turn of phrase is not going to tank your search. But I say this to encourage you to kind of experiment and try different combinations and try different filters and really see what comes up. Because I realize that catalog searching is not that intuitive if what you're more used to is using search engines. And I think that's most of us. So it is a bit of an art in a way that Google isn't. The next thing I want to discuss, I know this is a big question, is how to access materials. First thing to talk about, you can access them in person at the Center for Jewish History's Lillian Goldman Reading Room. So I actually didn't put the link in because I want to show you how I always get there. Literally Google Lillian Goldman Reading Room. It's the first thing that comes up. And you need an account on a platform called Aeon. And it's linked a few times in this reading room page on the center's website. I'm going to go here. I already have an account, but if I didn't, I would go to first time users and make an account, would log on to Aeon. And now I go here and go to schedule appointments, and I can schedule space in the physical reading room. It's going to show you it's going to go straight to the most recent, the soonest open appointment. I know this for sure because when I did this an hour ago, it went to April 5th. But this appointment next Wednesday, somebody must have canceled because now this is open. And now that's the first appointment I can see. So you can, whatever they're doing currently, they're gonna go to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in April. You can do half-day appointments, morning or afternoon or both, and you just click on the slot that you want or double click on the slot that you want, put in your information and schedule your appointment. And I do want to note, the center does have a genealogy institute that also has reading room appointments available. They have a separate reading room. So you can also check the availability of the genealogy institute if that's what you're interested in. So the reading room is administered by the center, not by YIVO. So if you have questions or you have trouble making an appointment, anything like that, you should email inquiries@cjh.org. That is the reference staff at the center, and they'll be able to help you because nobody at YIVO has any access to the appointment back end. So we can't give any insight into that if you have any questions. The next thing I would like to talk about is YIVO remote reference. That is when you book a Zoom appointment to talk to a YIVO archivist, probably me, about your research. So this is all linked. This is also linked on the YIVO website, on our research page and our remote research page, but we use a platform called Calendly. So you can see we have these initial research discussions options. You click, we offer them on Thursdays. So you pick a date and if there's a time, it'll show all the time slots that are open. So you can see probably the 24th is still pretty open. As it gets closer, they tend to fill up, but whatever slots are available, you click, you hit confirm. We're going to ask you some questions. I do ask that you fill in as much information as you possibly can. That'll just make the appointment, the conversation we have, as relevant as it can be to you. And we'll talk about that more a little bit later. But fill in whatever information you have, whatever you'd like us to know. And then once you confirm your event, Calendly will automatically send you a Zoom link. So if you don't get it, check your spam, because that's an automatic function. The other option is mainly complementary reference photographs. If you are looking for a ton, we're gonna have to figure that out. But that is when you put in this request, we take our document camera, whatever folders you're looking for, whatever materials you're looking for, we take pictures of everything, we put it in a PDF, and we email it to you. And for those of you who are already familiar, we did used to do what we call document sessions on Zoom through Calendly. People would be able to sort of look as I flipped through pages to see what they wanted. We're going to try not offering those because people were just really watching me take pictures for a half hour or 45 minutes. And it's kind of a waste of their time, especially now that we have this just request form. I think people are much happier to just ask for what they want and we photograph it instead of them having to hop on Zoom to watch me do it. But if you would like a document session, just email and we can still do one. We're just kind of experimenting with opening up more of those session slots for those initial research discussions, which are really best suited for Zoom. Again, here, please fill out as much information as you can. If you cannot answer this question, which is what folders are you looking for, please email, okay? If you don't email and you just kind of put, I want material on X, what's going to happen is it's all first come, first serve. So I'm going to get through the queue. I'm going to get through your request, and I'm going to email you and I'm going to say, hey, what do you actually want? Here's a research guide, whatever. Because I don't know what folders you want. But now we're doing it a week or a week and a half or 2 weeks later. So when in doubt, email reference@yivo.org and we can figure out exactly what you're looking for, and then you can request it. We are also launching a research assistant program. We do get a number of requests that are just too time intensive for us to be able to fulfill free of charge. So to try and be able to offer something, we're going to launch this in a few weeks, a research assistant program where we have recruited a pool of research assistants that I think we've Frankensteined into a group of people that can address anything in the YIVO archives, hopefully. And we'll pair you with somebody who has the background and the language skills, and we'll make a research plan together and they'll figure it out. And they'll go and actually carry out the research plan. So that'll be $50 an hour. More information to come. Definitely keep an eye on the YIVO website if that's something that you're interested in. But those are, right now, all of the ways to access materials. We are always striving to do as much as we can. We know that we have really a global audience and we are based in one city. Everything is, physically in New York, but we are really always doing as much as we can to make sure everyone can access these materials. So really quick, I want to talk about research questions. This might sound incredibly obvious when I say it, but to me personally, and I think a lot of people who do a lot of historical research would agree, this is actually the hardest part of the research process, right? The first thing to think about is, what is the scope of my research question? Think about the end result that would adequately answer the question that you're answering. Maybe you're just looking for a yes or no. Was this person at this convention? Was this building at this address? Whatever. Sometimes it's just you're looking for an answer. A lot of times you're looking for something that is maybe a paper's worth of, maybe a paper, maybe an article, maybe a book. You know, people come to YIVO for all of the above. But keep in mind that if you are asking a question that requires a book length answer, you're gonna want to put in book length time, right? So if that's not what you're looking to do, you need a smaller scope for your research question. And regardless, maybe you are doing a more involved project. There's your general research question and your research question for right now. Every time you come to an archive, either to come look at materials or just with an inquiry, unless you're sort of doing one of those initial research discussions and you're really talking about the bigger plan, you're going to want to figure out what the smaller question is for that interaction that is going to lead you to the bigger question that you're asking. Another thing, this comes up a lot. What do you not care about? This is where I find I tend to get not the most stuck, but sort of go back and forth the most with researchers. It's very common that somebody will say, oh, I'm looking into X. And then I'm like, okay, here's what we have on X. And then they say some version of, oh, I'm not interested in this location. I'm not interested in this time period. I already saw this the last time I was at YIVO. I can't know that, right? In an archive of this size, what you're not looking for is almost as important as what you are looking for, right? So definitely something you need to figure out for yourself is really what is, again, the scope of your project. Is it geographically limited? Is it limited by time? Is it limited by person, like people involved, anything like that? And then communicate that, right? If you're talking to somebody else about it, so that they kind of, what's up? Oh, bye, Jane. So that they can, the first time they provide you with materials or with sort of resources, that they can do that appropriately. The next question, again, this comes up less, but is still comes up enough that it's worth discussing, is this an archival question? A lot of times people will want to look in the archives for questions like, what was life like in the Lodz ghetto? Right? Great question. Also one that has been written about. So primary source research is going to be kind of the most difficult way to go about answering that. And a lot of people still want to do it. And I'm very happy to, like, I love that. I'm very happy to help you out. But definitely, either way, whether you want to dive into the archives or not, you do want to start by looking around and getting a sense of what's already been published. Maybe somebody's already answered your question, or maybe you want to sort of look at what's already been published and see what you can add to the question. There's a lot of ways that knowing what's already out there is going to be helpful. So I just want people to be sort of aware of the fact that archives, again, unless you're looking at those really like, was X here, was Y there, yes or no answers, archives are rarely going to have the answer. They're going to have the parts that you need to build the answer. Finally, YIVO specific question. Is YIVO the institution that has the material that I'm looking for? And I do want to take this as an opportunity to talk about what's not at YIVO, because I think that this is as important as what is at YIVO. Let me just say before I get into this, all of this stuff is very related to genealogy, which I know is of great interest. All of this is in our family history research guide, which is on the YIVO website and which is linked in the link list that we keep talking about. And I'm sure my colleagues will throw it in the chat. So everything that I explain is on there, and also anything Any exceptions to what I'm about to say are listed on there. But I want to talk through some of these things because we get asked about them a lot, and by and large, we just don't have them. So the first is records from DP camps, or the post-World War II displaced persons camps. What YIVO has a pretty extensive collection of DP camp material, which is why people think that we have records. But what we have all came from a post-war call for material. So it's all stuff that individual people had in their possession. Ephemera, objects, toys, posters. We have a lot of that kind of stuff. But what we do not have is the administrative records, which also means that we don't have the case files that genealogists are interested in. There were many DP camps in several countries that operated for years after World War II. So it's not like there's one big organized DP camp archive that you can just go and be like, oh, I want this camp. What you need to do for DP camp research is figure out which agencies were involved in administering the DP camp, and there might have been multiple, and then figure out where that agency's archives are. And as a note, many DP camps were administered by the UN, and those records were added to the International Refugee Organization's papers. And the IRO papers are at the French National Archives. So if you feel like you're hitting a wall, you might be in France, which I know is not what a lot of our genealogists are American. It's not what they want to hear, but you know, that's just where they are. We also rarely have vital records, so that's birth certificates, death certificates, marriage licenses, things like that. Adoption papers. What I recommend doing for vital records, your first stop, unless you are aware of a sort of non-governmental Jewish collection elsewhere, is just to ask the public library or government archive of the place where the person that you're looking for lived. Those kinds of records tend to be location-based, and somebody who's familiar with that sort of records landscape, I love public librarians for this, that would probably be the best person to guide you. Excuse me. So finally, we do have records from a lot of large communal organizations. They're all listed on the Family History Research Guide. Organizations like the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, other resettlement organizations, the National Desertion Bureau. We do have them. We do, you know, there are a number of case files, sort of case file based collections, but we don't have them all. We certainly don't have them all. There are other archives that have those case file things. Our partner, the American Jewish Historical Society, has a ton of those. And if you ask me about those, I will try and find who has them and send you to that institution. But I would like to address a common misconception, which is that archivists have special access to all archives. I do somewhat regularly get requests to reach out to institutions on behalf of researchers because people think that I, you know, have some sort of special access to other places. And for better or for worse, that is not the case. So I will always try and find where something is if you ask me, but if it's not at YIVO, I don't have any special access. So we do have this list of supplementary resources. They're all linked. They're all pretty self-explanatory, except for Yiddishland and WorldCat. So I'm going to go over those really quickly, and then leave a little bit of time for questions. But also, as ever, forever and ever, if you have questions about any of this or about your specific research, I know we're getting to the end. You can always email reference@yivo.org. So where are my tabs? So I want to talk about Yiddishland real quick. This is a great resource. This is the place name resource that I referenced earlier. This is a really quite thorough attempt to compile all of the place names of Yiddish towns in different languages. So if you are looking for the name of a town, this is a great place to look. And it's also, to me, just very interesting. It's by tab here, so you can go by country. There's different indexes or indices by different ways to look. So that's a great resource. The last thing I want to talk about really quick is WorldCat. Don't need to find a tab. I can just type it. Here we go. So WorldCat is a shared library catalog. Thousands of libraries across the world participate. Academic libraries are very likely to participate in WorldCat. And this is not so relevant to archival material. By definition, it's unique and it's only at YIVO. But if you're looking in the catalog and you find any library material, that's sort of any book, any periodical, anything that was published, I recommend that you check WorldCat for it, unless you are local to New York and you can just come to the reading room. Because even the rare stuff, other institutions might have it. And what's really nice about WorldCat is that it's linked to a number of big attempts to organize digitized material, things like HathiTrust. So sometimes I'll be looking for a book and I'll look on WorldCat and it's digitized through HathiTrust or through whatever, and the link is right there. So that always saves some time. WorldCat is like any other catalog. And let's actually just look through, look at our record. This is a little hard to visualize, but so let's say I'm looking for the Holocaust Encyclopedia. I know YIVO has it, but let's pick an old zip code. I want to see if it's closer. I live in New Jersey. I don't want to take the train. Great. Rutgers University has it. Raritan Valley Community College has it. This library system has it. And then I can also look through these related subjects. And so this is not just YIVO and YIVO's subject headings. This is many, many libraries. So there are a lot of other institutions that have Jewish history material. So just like I can look at the subject headings for YIVO and Center for Jewish History catalog records, I can go to WorldCat and see what libraries around the world have on it. I'm going to stop sharing. I've been talking for a long time. Let's take as many questions as we can.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thanks, of course, for everyone who's been here so far. I appreciate your lively messages in the chat and also the questions you've put in the Q&A. Going back to the beginning of the event, Hallel, we have a question asking if you could re-explain the difference between searching on the catalog and on the archive space.
Sure.
And they want to know if items in the newly digitized Vilna collection would come up in both or one of those or neither. Okay, so all those questions are kind of related. So let's just pull up RG4 again. Also, I will say Vilna has its own dedicated portal that we can look at as well. I know Vilna is of great interest. So here is, let me screen share. Can everyone see that? Yeah, okay. So let's look at RG4 again. This is the same collection. The catalog record, all the information you're going to get from the catalog record is here, right? So I have my description, I have a lot of notes, but there is nothing about the actual contents. For that, you need to go to the finding aid. And the finding aids are what live in archive space. So this is a Vilna collection. Vilna collections are, unless you're in the Vilna portal, Vilna collections are for search purposes normal YIVO collections with record group numbers. But if you're looking for an individual object, you are going to want to look in archive space, because anything, the same thing as sort of like the one, like let's say I want to look for this diary that I know is called Pioneer 5. Maybe I saw it cited in a book. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. So I'm going to put Pioneer 5 into
archive space. An archive space is described on the folder level. So it should come up somewhere. Hold on. See if this helps. I do this myself. Everything I just talked about is really, I do it all the time. So Pioneer 5 comes up because the folder is described in searchable, and I can go straight to the digital objects. If I tried to do that in the catalog, it would not come up because that folder is not described in the catalog record. That's not what a catalog record is for. Basically, the easiest way to think about it is catalog records are for libraries. So kind of an item, they're for individual items. So a catalog record for a book, like a library book, is going to give you a lot of the information that you need, because you know, in a full catalog record, you're going to have like the table of contents and description of if there's illustration, whatever, in like a good catalog record. So for an individual object, a catalog record is great. For an archival collection, if there is a finding aid available, you're going to want to look at that because they're collections of objects, right? And we have them in the catalog because, of course, you know, we want people to be able to find them. But I encourage you, if you see that there's an archive space collection, an archive space resource for the collection you're looking at, to go there. And let's just real quick look at the Vilna Collections portal, vilnacollections.yivo.org. So this is just a dedicated search portal that is only going to pull from the Vilna Collections. And for those who don't know, the Vilna Collections is a major project we just finished to digitize all of YIVO's pre-war holdings. So between 1925, when YIVO was founded in Vilnius, and World War II, which is a lot of materials. So that is just, if you know you're interested in Vilna stuff, you can go straight to the portal and just search there, and it's going to pull from the catalog, but it's only going to pull Vilna without you having to sort of finagle your search terms to only get Vilna stuff.
Another question from our audience is, what special training goes into being an archivist, and how is being an archivist potentially different than being a genealogist?
Sure. So I'm not a genealogist, first of all. I always urge people to go to genealogists because I can tell you what's at YIVO, and that's it. I don't have any special insight into other genealogy resources. Most archivists have, just anecdotally, it's a master's level training. Most archivists that I know have an MLIS, a Master's of Library and Information Science, usually with some sort of focus in archives. That's what I'm at the tail end of. There are also dedicated degrees, dedicated master's degrees in archives or archives and records. Those are newer, so I think less common, but I do know a number of people who have those. You'll find a lot of archivists do have some sort of formal background in history, and at a place like YIVO, some sort of formal training in languages, but that all really depends on the institution. Genealogy has its own sort of pathways that I'm less familiar with because I'm not one.
Cool. So we'll close out today's session with just one more question, which would be if you could let us know something or some things that you think are really interesting that YIVO has in our archival collections. And before you answer, I'll just say to everyone, thank you for being here, and a reminder that the event is being recorded, so you will be able to watch it afterwards on YouTube. If there's any material you wanted to look at again, any links you wanted to check out, you're welcome to take your time to rewatch the video to do that. And also, when you have more questions, because we do hope that you have more questions, you can email archivists, including Hallel, at reference@yivo.org. And no matter where you are in the world, you're welcome to schedule a remote research session. Or if you're local, we'd love to have you stop by our building, and you can make an appointment through the Center for Jewish History to look at some of these materials in person.
So that's a hard question because I think everything is interesting. One thing off the top of my head, I like the sort of formats that people don't always think about. And we have a lot of media in very old and hard to maintain and take care of formats. One of the things that is, we have a lot of videotapes and like 16mm tapes, and a number of them have been digitized. There used to be a website that I think was running on Flash and is no longer accessible, but we do have them all, just videos of life in pre-war Europe, which are pretty rare. So until they're back in archive space, everything that we have digitized will eventually get into archive space. But until then, you can email and we can put them in Dropbox and you can see those videos, which are, I think, really fun.
Great. Thank you so much, Hallel.
That's a great point.
And thank you everyone for being here today. We're so glad you took the time to learn a little bit more, whether you are an experienced researcher or perhaps it was your first experience ever thinking about what an archive even is. So thank you all. Thank you for joining the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. And thank you very much, Hallel. And everyone, I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all for joining. Let me know if you have questions.